Hello, beautiful people. This is the Inspiration Trilogy podcast, a platform for women across the globe to share wisdom, advice, and just have some meaningful conversations. So today's guest is Rachel Russell, who's an educator, a coach, a speaker, a writer with over 25 years of experience in early childhood education. And you are also the founder of Quite Frankly Coaching and the host of the Parental podcast, which is amazing, I've got to say. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. Look, it's great to have you here. For those who may not have seen you out and about on socials and what have you, would you like to share a little bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are?
Sure. So for a really long time, all I wanted to do was be a teacher, went ahead and did that. Yeah, as you said in the intro, I was teaching for 25 years in Australia and abroad. Spent a lot of time in London, in Edinburgh, in India and Nepal teaching.
Wow.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Came home to Australia when I was early 30s. Had my kids, moved to Karratha in Western Australia, stayed there for a short time and then moved down to Bunbury in Southwest WA. Went back to university when my kids were 1 and 3 because I had major brain fog and couldn't remember the word for chin.
As you do when you're a mum,
and you do, right? Running on 45 minutes sleep a night. I was like, what's that word? What's that word? Oh, chin. Oh, yeah. So then I thought, I better go and use my brain again. So I then went and did a master's in early childhood with a big look at brain development and neuroscience, in particular in boys in education. And did that for a while, completed that, then went back to teaching in the classroom and just found a bit of a bristle between what I'd learnt as best practice and studied and researched and then what was actually happening in the classrooms.
Yeah.
So I left my primary class and then did further study in NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming. So taking all of the research from the neuroscience that I'd studied and then turning that into practical application. And then I could see how that would help kids with ADHD, anxiety, performance, all of that sort of stuff. And I thought, oh, there's actually beautiful scope to work with kids how I want to work with kids, and then invariably ended up working with families as well, and then extended to people, OTs, speeches, psychs, the whole gamut. So so in 2022, I started my own business, Quite Frankly Coaching, and that's what I do now. I work with kids and families in the education space, professional development, all of that sort of stuff. And I absolutely love it. And then as a side note, the podcast is great. I get to meet really cool people again and just impart and help as many people as I can to, reconnect with who they are. And it's really enjoyable and beneficial and I love it. So,
yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. You've got such a wealth of experience and expertise. I love that you really were focusing, because the thing, just going back to what you said before about dealing with focusing on kids with ADHD and anxiety, because that is actually becoming more and more prominent in schools, especially in primary schools as well, a lot more than it used to be, whether that be from, societal changes or whatever else. But I myself also have a son who finds school very challenging. And can get quite, I guess, emotional and deregulated. So it's very challenging trying to fit them into this mould that doesn't fit them. And there are changes. Our school's been quite wonderful in assisting, but there's so much more that needs to be done, and there's so much more understanding that needs to be out there. And the anxiety that comes with that, and the anxiety just from a general day-to-day younger children in this generation. So, look, just to start off, I guess, moving along that path, because you're saying you help with kids and you help with families. So where would you start in a situation like that, dealing with, I guess, a child who has severe anxiety and it's affecting the family dynamics and all that kind of thing? How does that work?
Sure. So in terms of a child that's feeling lots of emotions around, feeling anxious, feeling nervous, feeling fear of the future, all of that sort of stuff,
Mm.
Really pairing that back with like what's going on, what's behind the scenes, what stories are you telling yourself around this and this and this.
Mm.
Kind of getting to grips with where that's actually coming from. Then we would take a look at kind of sensory profiling. So how are you actually viewing the world? Because, we view the world through our senses and through our nervous system. And, the first question that any person asks themselves on the planet every day in new environments or similar environments where they're just not sure is, am I safe or not? So looking at what parts of your environment are indicating to you that you are not safe. And they might be, I feel it. It could be it's too loud, it's too noisy, it's too smelly, it's too light, it's too bright, it's too fast, it's too whatever.
Mm.
Kind of unpacking that and seeing where we're at with that. And then we would move on to, relationships within the home. How are we discussing things? How are we communicating? How are we feeling when we do? We would then look at nervous system response, so fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. How are we going with that? What are we doing around that to regulate those emotions rather than heighten the
Mm.
dysregulation of those? So there's plenty of things we could be looking at, but basically we're looking at the core of the root cause rather than the symptoms, the symptomatic behavior of the cause. So
Yeah.
kind of delving into what's actually the concern here. Because what it might present as, I've got a really sore belly, right? And then we go down the gastroenterologist, we go to see
Yeah.
the doctors and we go and do all the thing. And it's like, actually, I was really, it's just too noisy in my class and I can't concentrate. And then if I can't concentrate, I don't want to wear ear muffs or, ear things because I don't want to stand out. But then I can't hear what's going on. And then the story I tell myself is I'm dumb, I'm stupid, I'm not enough, it's too fast, I'll never catch
Mm.
up. And then you have the parent teacher meeting and the teacher says, little Johnny isn't following along and isn't, is lazy or distracted or whatever they say.
Yeah.
However, behavior is presented and it sort of just becomes a snowball. So my job is to come in and actually find out what is actually going on
Mm.
and then release that, which is really
Yeah,
important.
because it can, I mean, it's so challenging for these children, and like you say, it can often present in different ways, and they can be considered naughty or misbehaving, or they're not doing this. But often it can also be because the anxiety, and it gets so overwhelming that they can't do anything, or they act out because they don't know how to regulate. So look, it's so important, and I think as parents we all have our own childhood and our own past, and there may be things that we get triggered by or that we react to that we may not be aware until these things are kind of in front of us. So how as parents, when we realize perhaps we are getting triggered, I mean, what kind of work can we do on ourselves as well as parents? Because it's such a difficult journey. We have so much guilt. We're overwhelmed. We're tired. We're all these things. We never give ourselves time, and then we're trying to regulate and be everything. So, I mean, that's a lot to kind of unpack and deal with. But what's kind of a starting point where we can look at as mums and just make that start to try and change?
Yep. So the first thing I would do then is the same process with a mum. Yeah. So I'd be looking at you, asking you to get back to your root cause. So why is your child eating cereal as loudly as he does? Why is that triggering you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what is the root cause of that for you? Like, is it the actual chew or is it a nervous system response? All of that sort of stuff. Maybe another question that I ask parents is, what did you need at your child's same age? So
Mm-hmm.
if you've got an 8-year-old that's having a moment and they're allowed to have a moment and they're getting away with the moment and you're all that, maybe there's a part of you that was like, no one listened to me when I was 8 and I wasn't allowed to do this. And then you might get resentful and then you feel guilty and then away you go down the rabbit hole. So what
Yeah.
is it you needed as that 8-year-old and go and deal with that so that when your
Uh,
child does the same thing, you're approaching it with empathy and understanding as opposed to just put your bloody shoes on. Bloody hell, how many times do I have to do you know what I mean?
Which is so easy for many of us to do, especially when we just snap. And, yeah, you don't always think about it, and you don't always think why you're triggered that way when it's not really a big thing. Sometimes it can feel like it is. But, yeah.
Yeah. And then also, our brains think in pictures, okay? Our brains are really simple creatures. They love beginning, middle, end, okay? And then when we make up a story to that, we get rewarded with brain chemicals, mainly dopamine, yeah? So if we can invent a story about your child, let's say not putting their shoes on when they're asked to, what we can interpret that story as, my child is being naughty, disrespectful, not listening to me. He always does this. He never does this, you know, whatever the story is.
Yeah.
But is that actually true? Like, is that actually happening? Do you know what I mean?
Or is it just you're not feeling heard maybe or something, which relates back to your childhood? Yeah.
Yeah. I have a story at my house. So I hate ironing. Like, I am not an ironer. Like, you know, if God wanted me to do ironing, like, no, just I don't iron. But, you know, my kids go to school, they've got a uniform. So, of course, I do the righty, and I used to iron it. So, on this particular day, I had brought in the washing, I'd folded the washing, I'd ironed the uniforms, and I said to my kids, can you please put your ironing away? Which their interpretation of putting ironing away versus mine is very different. So when I went into their bedrooms, what I found was that the ironing was put away, folded up, smushed into the corner. And of course, I cracked it, right? Like, I have gone ballistic. It wasn't the first time it had happened, but it was definitely the last time it was ever going to happen. So I was ranting and raving, and you guys don't respect me, and you think I'm a doormat, and blah, blah, blah. And then my son at the time, I think was maybe 13, and said, how did you arrive at that story? Like, how did me folding this up mean I don't respect you? Like, I don't get that. He's like, I'm just lazy. I couldn't be bothered. So I just threw it in. Got nothing to do with you.
It's interesting how they throw that back at you, and then you're like, oh, you have sort of an aha moment.
Yeah, 100%. So I said, do you care if I iron your clothes? And they're like, we do not care at all. And I'm like, okay, cool. So the story I'm telling myself is, if I do this thing that I do not want to do, I'm going to think that, you know, I'm amazing because I'm doing a thing I don't want to do. Hello, martyrdom, right? And then you're disrespecting me because you're throwing the thing in. And they're like, that's not true. We're not disrespecting you. We just don't care. I'm like, okay, cool. Okay, cool. I'm off the hook. I don't have to iron anymore. I don't care. They don't care. What am I getting? So, you know, the story I'm telling myself, the interpretation of your behavior has a lot to do with how I internalize how I show up. Yeah. And getting back to anxiety, anxiety shows up in most of the kids I work with. Anxiety shows up as anger. Very, very rarely. It does show up as fawning, or, you know, kind of that shy, hidden away.
Yeah.
But often it looks like anger. And so the story I'm telling myself is, you're very angry, you're very disrespectful, you're very naughty, you're very disruptive, whatever you are. But actually, what is actually going on behind the thing? So I would going on for the mum is potentially going on for the child. Same.
Yeah. Look, it's so interesting, and it's right that to be able to break the cycles, generational cycles, and be better parents, and I guess create a different generational parenting for our future family is to work on ourselves. And it's good, I guess, in this day and age, and particularly now that so many women and parents, we are going into that self-reflection, and we are going through, you know, just understanding ourselves a bit more to be able to make those changes. So, look, I really appreciate what you're doing. I think it's so wonderful. I know I myself could do with your coaching, because even though you have all this wealth of information, which is another thing, right? There's so much information out there. One place might be saying, oh, this is how you do it. No, this is how you do it. You're doing it wrong. You're doing it right. It changes. It's back and forth. You go down this rabbit hole. You're so confused. And in all reality, you know your child better than anyone else. You know yourself, or you need to know yourself a bit more, but every family and every child is different. So it really comes down to knowing yourself, knowing your child. And I mean, it's good to have information, but it's like when you go to the doctor, you don't go and Google your symptoms, because you just Google doctor could tell you anything. You're dying of cancer when it's just a simple little rash or something. So it's really just understanding yourself a bit more and coming to someone like yourself who has that experience and understanding and knowledge, and you've got so much to offer families. So for those out there who are listening and who feel like they need a little bit more, where's the best place to start reaching out to you and starting that journey?
Yeah, sure. So I'm across all of the socials, even on TikTok. Can't even deal with that. But anyway, there you are.
Wow, I haven't ventured there yet.
So, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I've got my own website. It can be found on just Google profiles as well. So, yeah, if you're at home and you're not sure, maybe you're struggling yourself with kind of identity and then what that looks like, just touching on what you were talking about just now. Or you've got a child who, is maybe, the mayor of Struggle Town right now, and you just want to get some more insight. Yeah, absolutely. You can reach out that way. Just on the point you just made about there's so much information out there. You're absolutely right. There is so much information out there and it's really conflicting. And I think there's a lot of stuff on social media for us to get it right all the time and be absolutely perfect and, have the dinner.
Absolutely. Picture perfect family. Yeah, it just doesn't happen.
They do not exist, right? That does not exist. But one thing that I did for myself, and I now go on and coach parents to do, is actually kind of pare back. I, in the early days, was really struggling with parenting because I'd come from, I was a school principal, I was a board of directors, I was on all of the things, and then within 2.3 seconds, I was at home in 4 walls with 1 baby.
Yeah, and it's dramatic change, isn't it?
It's dramatic, right? And no one talks about it, right? And so they're like, how's the bliss? And you're like, what bliss are you talking about, right? I'm not experiencing any, there's no bliss here. I don't, identity crisis kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I then started to treat myself as a mum as a job, like the most important job I would ever do, but as a job. And then because I come from education, I was like, okay, so now I need to have a mission statement and then some KPIs. Yeah.
I love that.
So my mission statement was, I'm going to raise 2 kind humans. That's my mission statement. Okay, cool. How am I going to do that? Like, what does a kind human be or act, behave, think, feel? How they roll? Okay, they're this and this and this and this. Okay, cool. Now I can go ahead. So then when I get to my parenting stage and I'm setting rules or setting boundaries or having conversations and having tricky conversations and hard ones and engaging with external sources, at the heart of it is like, what am I creating here? I'm creating 2 kind men. Is this what I need to do in order to achieve that? Yes, okay, cool. No, okay, no. And just adjusting my sails accordingly. And so, if you're getting up in your grill about something that your child's doing, like, is it for that purpose or no? And just coming back to you, I think, in this day and age, we are very good at giving our power away to people that we think know better. But inherently, we know who we are and we know in our gut what's right and what's not. And just coming back to that and trusting that and enabling that to speak is going to really help parents out there listening to this.
Yeah, just having that confidence. I really love that you do the mission and value statement. I think that's a really interesting way. I've never thought about I guess going down that path, but it really makes a lot of sense, and it's probably a good starting point for a lot of parents out there to really think about that before reaching out to you and going further with that. So, look, thank you so much for the conversation today. I think you've got a wealth of knowledge and you've got so much to offer. So, we went through, what I'll do is put information in the bio below for everyone who on ways to reach out to you, even though we've mentioned that before. And look, do you have anything, any courses or anything coming up that you'd like to highlight for the listeners out there?
Sure. So every month I run an ADHD workshop where it's free of charge. You can just come along. It's online. And I set it kind of early into Western Standard Time so that if you're over East, you're still awake and, maybe grab a cuppa. And I just basically go through the neurology behind ADHD so that parents that are coming from an emotional standpoint can actually understand the root cause of certain behaviors. And then from there, we can work out a plan for you to, how to construct communication and timeline and boundaries and, all the things, autonomy, all of the stuff. So that's the one that I run regularly. And then, like you mentioned earlier, I do have a podcast that I launch every Thursday. And in there, I'll just always be talking about things that have come up in my work, 2 or 3 weeks in a row that are just common themes and whatnot. So we cover things like boundaries, autonomy, love, starting school, expectations, how to talk to teachers, all of the stuff that we need to know about. So in terms of that, and then my coaching is tailor-made to your requirements, and that can either be, one by one kind of scenario or in packs, just depending on the needs of the family.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. Well, look, thank you so much. So anyone out there who was listening to that just then, reach out to Rachel, have a look at the courses. I'll probably be doing that one myself. So, look, thank you so much for coming on today, and I look forward to seeing where you go from here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.